Did you notice that this show doesn't have any commercials? I'm not selling you diapers or vitamins or smoothies or gasoline. That's because I don't want corporate sponsors telling us what to investigate and what to say. Instead, you're our sponsors. This is a production by our nonprofit, the Informed Consent Action Network. If you want more investigations, more hard-hitting news, if you want the truth, go to ICanDecide.org and donate now. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are out there in this beautiful world. It's time to step out onto the high wire. For everyone in the United States of America, happy Thanksgiving. What an amazing day this is, a moment where we all actually get to sit down with each other. So many were robbed of this experience last year. So we feel like we're coming around, we're hanging, we're gonna have some pie and some ice cream and some turkey, some cranberry sauce. It's gonna be really awesome. We wanna have a fun show today. So coming up, the High Wire Top 10 Super Spreaders of Truth. Some of the best testimonials that have happened across this country when it comes to masking or vaccine mandates and school board meetings and all that. We thought it'd be fun to sort of watch how different people do it. But before we get to that, I just want to say that I want to take this opportunity because this is a day of giving thanks here in America, and certainly here at ICANN and the High Wire. We have a lot to be thankful for. I really want to thank my incredible team that makes this show possible in studio over there in the control room right now as we speak. It really takes a psychic ability for them to figure out where I'm going, to fire the different slides. We make it look seamless, but it's only possible because of this amazingly intuitive team that I have working so hard. Of course, to all of the great lawyers at Syrian Glimstad that have just been kicking butt on all of the lawsuits that we've filed over this year. Also, all of the FOIA requests and petitions we've made to the FDA and the CDC. It's a constant job, taking so many of your calls to discuss all the different legal issues that you've had out there as our audience. And then, of course, our international team of investigators and scientists and doctors and lawyers that are bringing us information from around the world that we're tuning in with every week. We could not do it without you. You're keeping us not only the pulse of America, but the pulse of the world. So we have so much to be thankful for. And then outside of here, I think we should all really be thankful in this time of coming together and recognizing all of those amazing police officers, the firefighters, the pilots and stewards and truckers and nurses and doctors, everybody that's been standing up against this vaccine mandate. This is the largest pushback in the history of the United States of America against forced vaccination by our government. It is proof that we truly are winning. And if there's anything greater than celebrating winning, I don't know what it would be. So let's get on with the rest of the show. For Thanksgiving, it's time for the Jackson Report. Happy Thanksgiving, Jeffrey. How you guys doing today?
Hey, Del, doing great. Thanks for having me on as always, and happy Thanksgiving to you and your family.
All right, just want to say how much we are thankful for you, the incredible work you do, just breaking down these stories and getting to the nitty gritty and finding them and, you know, sorting through it. I mean, part of what's difficult is deciding what makes it onto the show and what, you know, is going to be in a wastebasket somewhere because it's all moving so fast. But you've done such a great job for us, so thank you.
You bet. You're welcome. Well, looking through the headlines this Thanksgiving, some really interesting news clips here. Let's take a look at turkey prices. This is what it looked like in the news in case anybody's shopping for them. Take a look.
Okay.
Gobbling up a Thanksgiving turkey might cost you a little more this year. Inflation and supply chain issues have driven up the price of turkeys by 4 to 5%.
And they say so far this year, the demand has nearly doubled. At the same time, the price of feed and labor has gone up. And they think as more people try to get together this year, there could be fewer turkeys, but they definitely think that the price is likely to go up.
Everyone is looking for a bargain when buying a turkey.
Yeah, however, the sales of fresh farm-raised birds are flying high right now.
The statistics tell the story best. Recent data from Consumer Price Index shows food prices are steadily rising, with meat prices alone up more than 12%.
Now, November is flying through. But this year, when you go to buy all the staples you normally do, you'll likely notice it's going to cost you more.
Isn't everything at this point costing more?
I love news stories like that. I mean, I don't know what why is it costing more? When she says like the demand for turkeys has doubled. You mean doubled from before Thanksgiving or since last Thanksgiving? I don't even understand. Turkeys are turkeys. The people eat turkeys. It's happening every Thanksgiving. There's like twice as many of us. I mean, a lot of this reporting doesn't even make sense. And do they have reasons for why this cost has gone up? Is it because, I mean, these are those places where, how did COVID affect this? Like, how did COVID affect turkeys? Did turkeys get sick? Did the farmers get sick? Did they not grow? Are there not truckers delivering them? I can't quite figure it out.
Looking through all the headlines and all the articles, there's several reasons. There's not one that's really being blamed for the turkey inflation of 2021. But
the great turkey inflation.
Yeah, heads up, people, lock your doors. But what we're looking at here is really kind of a culmination of a lot of things. The news is saying, well, because there was a slowdown in production, there's a worker shortage, and now things are being relaxed. The lockdowns are being relaxed. The vaccination has allowed people to get back to life. There's now this massive influx of people wanting to celebrate Thanksgiving compared to last year. That could be one part of it, but inflation's another part of it. And let's be honest about this. We've covered things like that taboo word, the Great Reset. We've covered this before. We've covered the hits in the economy that these lockdowns over the last almost 2 years now, we're coming up on 2 years for 15 days to slow the spread, has caused, and that is working with it. So the other headlines running parallel with those news pieces right there look like this. Inflation is good for you, says The Intercept. Don't panic over milk prices. Inflation is bad for the 1%, but helps out almost everyone else. And then we have here, this is Vox, why it's not time to panic about inflation. But then we have Consumer Report says here, consumer prices soar again and push U.S. rate of inflation to 31-year high. So those are some real numbers. What we really need to look at, and also with the worker shortage. I mean, I don't know if you see it where you're at, but everywhere it seems like I go, there's help wanted signs on the doors, and I'm sure there's a lot of reasons for that as well. But switching gears here, we had talked about this. Our team had been covering this behind the scenes a little bit, just following and tracking this story. There's some lawsuits going on that have really opened up at this point. We feel comfortable reporting on them with baby formula. This is something we would have reported on weekly, stories like this, but again, with COVID happening, it's COVID centric typically. But this is what one of the headlines look like. Why are lawsuits being filed over baby formula causing NEC? And we'll go over what that is in a second. But it says in this article, when a preterm infant, that's a preemie, is given cow-based baby formula and gets sick as a result, healthcare providers and manufacturers may face legal claims for medical negligence and product liability.
Wow.
Studies have shown that certain type of baby formula increase risk of necrotizing enterocolitis, that's the NEC. When a preemie is fed bovine-based baby formula, the risk of necrotizing enterocolitis is even greater. And for anybody that know, NEC results in inflammation and causes death of the intestinal tissue, and it can lead to death in the infant. So this is opening up now. Baby formula makers like Similac are facing lawsuits, and this is increasing. We're watching this almost like we're watching the beginning of the glyphosate lawsuits. They're really gaining momentum. And what really started it off was this baby lawsuit here. This was out of Connecticut, and the judge's opinion was a 41-page opinion that was written, handed down basically on August 19th, 2021. And it was against Abbott Laboratories for a baby formula. Just like we talked about, it caused NEC in a child, and the child unfortunately passed away. And the opinion by the judge opened up this lawsuit. So the opinion said that the failure to warn is a big thing now. Design defects and negligence. It's total open season on these baby formula manufacturer makers. So unfortunately, I think this is going to be a story that's going to really start to gain some legs moving forward, because a lot of people, as I'm reading, are jumping onto these lawsuits. There's a lot of law firms that are advertising now, just like we saw with glyphosate, to bring this in, because there seems like a really big deal. Now, running parallel with that, which is really interesting, because as I started researching this story, it was even bigger and bigger, was just less than 2 months ago, we had the House Oversight Committee produce this report. Oversight Committee staff report reveals alarming levels of toxic heavy metals in even more baby food. So they updated this report, and the report revealed that companies not only underreported the high levels of toxic content in the baby food, namely arsenic, heavy metals, but they also they knowingly kept these products on the market. Now, we hear about that so much, not even with vaccines, but with also pharmaceutical medications, that when they're shown an issue, they don't act quick enough, or they don't act at all to keep these in the market. So, check your shelves, everybody, because in this congressional report, we're talking Gerber, we're talking Beechnut, Plum Organics, Earth's Best is another one.
Wow.
And sure enough, right after that report was put out by that subcommittee, we have lawsuits now. Heavy metal lawsuits are another thing that's coming down on the baby manufacturing formula. Baby food companies now facing at least 43 lawsuits over heavy metals. So all of the companies named in that congressional report, have been hit with lawsuits, multiple lawsuits in multiple districts. So that's also something that's moving forward right now. So, parents out there, check your labels and really start to become aware of what is going in your baby's body. And, just finishing up this story, looking at breastfeeding, that was another topic that goes hand in hand with this, because a lot of people either are shamed for not doing it, or they switch to this formula really early. In 2018, we had opposition to breastfeeding. So in the spring of 2018, about 100 government delegates all around the world gathered in Geneva for a United Nations World Health Assembly. And here's the headline: opposition to breastfeeding resolution by U.S. stuns World Health officials. Now, I didn't even know about this story. It says in here, based on decades of research, the resolution says that mother's milk is healthiest for children, and countries should strive to limit the inaccurate or misleading marketing of breast milk substitutes. Sounds pretty common sense, but here's what happened with the United States did. Then the United States delegation, embracing the interests of infant formula manufacturers, upended the deliberations. Again, this is the New York Times.
Wow.
American officials sought to water down the resolution by removing language that called on governments to protect, promote, and support breastfeeding, and another passage that called on policymakers to restrict the promotion of food products that many experts say can have deleterious effects on young children. Now, that's what our U.S. delegates were doing in 2018, but that decades of research is just being built upon and built upon and built upon. And let me just run through a couple of headlines here. If anybody doesn't know this by now, let's look at breastfeeding, the health benefits of it. Breastfeeding can give your baby a healthy gut. If you don't know what the microbiome is, check it out. It's not just for newborns. Women who breastfeed may reduce their risk of cognitive decline, study finds. Then we go on to high blood pressure, diabetes. Breastfeeding tied to lower risk of diabetes and high blood pressure. 30% less likely to develop diabetes in the study. And then we're talking about $1 billion per day that people will save, the world will save, by breastfeeding. And this is all because of the health consequences that stem from not breastfeeding the children. So this is a huge, huge story. And I mean, obviously common sense, but it really helps to bring these stories to the surface again and remind people who may not know this.
Well, it also elucidates how the funding in our government has messed up our system completely in all of these stories. Number one, we're coming out against breastfeeding, trying normalizing, using formula, which we now know is toxic, as though you needed to be told that, that is not going to be the best way forward. And then you look at these stories of the baby food. I mean, what annoys me is great. We're going after the manufacturers, but where's the FDA in all of this, right? Where's the FDA? They're approving these products. Their job is to be monitoring products, going out there, testing to see if there's heavy metals or anything dangerous that we're giving to our children. And, you can't sue them, really. And there's nowhere to go. And so the manufacturers, yes, they should be on top of it. But we just keep giving this, this go-ahead with the FDA, CDC, that just time and time again, and probably is the biggest focus we have here on the High Wire and the work that we do through our nonprofit Informed Consent Action Network, is we're on the regulatory agencies. If we're going to have them, they should be doing their job. And it really just appears the only thing they now do is protect the industry and write papers for the industry and force industrial products upon us that aren't good for us, and then look the other way when they're hurting us. It's really a tragic pattern now that's happening in what should be the greatest nation in the world and the most thorough and focused nation when it comes to investigation of healthy products. And we're now finding the opposite is the truth.
Right, right. And let's talk about another regulatory agency. So the CDC. Last year, the CDC basically said, don't travel for Thanksgiving. So,
Yeah.
looking at the guidelines this year, I feel like we come a long way. But at the same time, if anybody's still looking for the CDC to tell you how to interact with your family or to even visit your family, I don't know. That's my opinion, but you may want to seek some different advice or
Right.
maybe put that on the back burner. But here's what the CDC is saying. If you're sitting there with your family right now and watching this show,
Let's see if you follow the rules
congratulations.
to get there.
Yeah. So, vaccine, other CDC guidelines encourage for holiday gatherings. And it says here the CDC still recommends gathering outdoors if and when possible. So, for me here in Massachusetts, that's a little tough because it's freezing. When gathering indoors, masks are still encouraged along with temperature checks and COVID-19 tests when available. So, I hope Granny has the temperature check gun at the
Yeah.
door, pointing it at people's heads before they walk in. And they're also saying, the CDC is also saying, unvaxxed traveling for people that have not been vaccinated, avoid crowds and stay at least 6 feet away from everybody except the people you're traveling with. So you're going to be a traveling hypochondriac at that point. And then we have normal. This is where the headlines get really funny. So normal holiday season ahead for vaccinated families, expert says. Not for unvaccinated families, apparently. And even the Grinch who stole Christmas, Anthony Fauci, this is what he had to say. Fauci says people should feel free to enjoy the holidays with their family this year, especially if they're all vaccinated. Fauci says people can certainly spend holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas with their family. So we've come a long way from possibly hiding the idea of a Wuhan lab leak to telling you can have Christmas and Thanksgiving with your family.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Fauci, for letting us gather together just like pilgrims and Indians, only this time vaccinated. You wonder, and again, all of this, just every single week, we'll just keep saying it. The vaccine doesn't stop your infection. It does not stop transmission. In fact, it may be hiding the symptoms as you walk into the house with your family and you're spreading it to each other. It's okay. We're all going to catch it anyway. I've said that from the beginning. This is it's just how you want to deal with it. You want to take a vaccine, take the risk of the vaccine, and then also catch the virus later. That's up to you. This is a free country. But the idea that we have two classes of citizens is insane, and hopefully a lot of families are coming to their senses. And look, if you're not, this is the time to find community. I mean, that's really the beauty here, right? Is what Thanksgiving represents is who are we most thankful to be around. And I have to say that my Thanksgiving, while this show is running and when we get home, I have all my friends and family that have agreed with us this whole time, many of which we had a blowout Thanksgiving last year, even when there was mandates against it. We're having a blowout this year with the people that I know and love and trust. And I tell you what, one beautiful thing about this COVID pandemic is it's truly shown us who our friends and family really are. And so I'm thankful. And I just wanted to add, too, for people out there that are having babies for the first time, right now at Thanksgiving, all you need is one of those little grinders. My mom used it when I grew up. We used it, just dump the little hot food in there, some yams or some broccoli, and mush it down, and the baby's all ready to go. Or I would look into baby led, which is something that we use with our children, handing big chunks of food to the baby. They just eat it like a big piece of apple, big carrot. And as it goes, they don't end up choking. And my kids have never really, they developed an amazing ability to understand their throat by doing that. I was shocked by it, very successful. I would look into those options. Well, Jeffrey, I want you to get out there and enjoy the rest of your Thanksgiving. Thank you for this quick news update. And certainly, we're not together, but raise a glass to you and yours, and certainly have a wonderful day.
Absolutely, Dal. Thank you so much, and happy Thanksgiving to you and your family.
Thank you very much. All right, well, let's get on with the rest of this show. I know that some of you have got pie to eat and whatever's going on there. Thank you for taking the time, but we thought we'd have some fun today. Who are the super spreaders of truth across this country? As we've had these school board meetings and health committee meetings, even CDC meetings, so many of us have been learning how to step up to that microphone and just super spread some truth all over the room there. And though, we have a top 10, I don't want to look at this as one is better than the other, or if you're out there and you've had an amazing testimony, you know who you are, you didn't make the cut. We just thought some of these were a really nice representation of the different types of styles that you'll find when you're out there. So to start this ride off, I want to go to an oldie but a goodie. I think that our own Dr. Neuenschwander has one of the best deliveries I've ever seen. He has this ability to add just a little touch of snark, which I really like. You know, it's nice to have a little bit of sense of humor in there, but also be cutting and biting, truthful, pragmatic. All of that makes this one of the greatest testimonies of all times. So let's take a look at this.
Next speaker is Mr. James Neuenschwander.
That's Dr. James Neuenschwander. I'm a physician with dual board certifications in emergency and integrative medicine, and I've had the honor in the past 32 years of evaluating thousands of children. The parents of those children will, to their dying breath, say that it was a vaccine that caused their child to descend into autism. It was a vaccine that caused their child's neurologic disorder. It was a vaccine that caused their child's asthma, their child's eczema, their child's food allergy. I know there's a huge disconnect between what these parents are telling us and what you guys are teaching us. I also know as an ER physician and by personal experience, ignore mom or dad at your own peril. But I'm not here today to debate the safety and efficacy of vaccines. I will, however, challenge each and every one of you in this room to that debate. I will challenge the CDC, the NIH, any university out there to that debate in a public forum, but I know it will never happen. The science isn't there. I'm all about the science. The biggest cause of vaccine hesitancy in this country is the lack of true vaccine science. I am here today to ask you guys in this committee to please, the community counts on you, do your job. I used to naively think that ACEP based all their recommendations on rigorous study of multiple trials that determined the safety and efficacy of each one of your recommendations. I've since learned that ACEP is simply participating in an industry-wide phenomenon I'm going to call junk science. Junk science has allowed, with all due respect to my colleagues in this room, presentation of these papers, of these studies that would never pass the rigors of a peer-reviewed journal if they were on any other subject other than vaccines. I've watched junk science allow GSK to publish a paper on their MMR vaccine in which 10% of these healthy 12-month-old babies ended up in an emergency room in 6 weeks, and 2.5% of them developed a new chronic medical condition. But that's all okay, not because they compared that vaccine to a placebo group or a delayed vaccine group, but because they compared it to the current MMR2 vaccine. That's the moral equivalent of comparing 10 shots of whiskey to 9 shots of whiskey and a shot of vodka and saying vodka doesn't cause intoxication. Junk science also allows us to take vaccines we know don't work to just double down. Increase the dose, increase the frequency. I saw this committee in the last meeting look at the pneumococcal vaccine and say it doesn't work, and yet leave it on the schedule and leave it up to us to determine whether or not we give it to a patient. I'm sorry, but that's your job. Please do your job. We already know the mumps vaccine is of questionable efficacy. We know the flu vaccine at best will prevent 50% of the cases of flu in healthy adults. We know the MMR vaccine will wear off and you'll have adults who are susceptible to measles. We stand on a threshold of a public health crisis, and vaccines are part of that. But you guys can make a difference. If we don't change the course of where we're at right now, we will have nothing but chronically ill children and adults. We'll have epidemics of autoimmunity, of autism, of infertility, of asthma, of food allergies, of cancer. But you can change that.
As a courtesy to the other
Demand
speakers,
better
we ask
science.
that you conclude your
Demand
comment.
better adjuvants. Demand better vaccines. I thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely fantastic testimony by Dr. James Neuenschwander. Now, in most households, you know, it's just one of us that really likes to take to the microphone. But in the Neuenschwander household, as it turns out, they've got another power speaker in James's wife, Trish. Take a look at her presentation.
My name is Patricia Neuenschwander. I've been a nurse for nearly 25 years, and I have witnessed an increase in neurodevelopmental disabilities and chronic disease in our children over those 25 years. The literature also reflects that this increase is happening. The vaccine schedule has rapidly increased from 12 doses in 1983 to 72 doses in 2017. We have gone from a 12% rate of chronic disease in our children to a rate of 54% in 2011. Although it feels really good to protect children by preventing infectious disease, what if it is at the cost of chronic disease? There have not been any placebo-controlled studies done as they're considered unethical for vaccines. There are no long-term safety studies that look at the schedule or the combination of vaccines that are given to children. And there's an urgent need for long-term, higher quality studies that look at the long-term effects of neurological and immune system outcomes in children. Can this committee ask or demand from the CDC that they conduct a large study using the VSD to evaluate the health outcomes in children fully vaccinated compared to children who are completely unvaccinated, to try to give us an idea if we may be trading infectious disease for chronic disease, and is it worth that cost? I care very much about the health of children. Thank you.
Well, it's amazing. The Neuenschwanders are huge supporters, and they help us a lot with the science here on the High Wire. They've always been the unsung heroes, but they truly are heroes, which is why we call them the Super News. There they are, super spreaders of truth. Dr. James and Trish Neuenschwander, thank you for joining us today, and happy Thanksgiving to you.
Happy Thanksgiving, Del. Thanks for having us on. It's great to be here.
Yes, thank you.
It's really great. You know, a lot of the little speeches we're going to see today are about COVID, but we really want to start out with you because we've celebrated your testimonies multiple times, the way you've sort of structured it all together, and you really also lay that groundwork. What is it, what is it like for you to step up to that microphone? I will say for myself that of all of the speeches that I give all over the country, for some reason, there is a stress level to stepping up to that microphone at the CDC where my heart is racing. The last time I did, I sat down and honestly, my heart was pounding my throat. And I just thought, why? I don't know if it's that I feel like I'm in a room full of vampires that want me dead or like what exactly is creating the stress level. But for you guys, you seem so natural and comfortable. What's the secret to stepping up and giving a good testimony for people that may be thinking about doing it themselves?
Well, I think if you watch my video very closely, you'll see my hand shaking because to me it was like like you, I don't get stressed out with public speaking. It sort of comes naturally, but to me, those are the people I wanted to be when I was in medical school. Those were I wanted to be that academician, that professor, with all the letters behind my name and all the memberships and everything else. So to me, it was kind of like I was 14 years old and I had to tell my dad some bad news he didn't want to hear. I mean, That's kind of how it felt to me. But, at the end of the day, it's you kind of know what you want to say and you get beyond the nerves and you say it because this stuff is really important. And particularly with COVID, we know that, Trish can tell us all about it. She was there before I was. People don't understand that the shenanigans that have been going on with the COVID vaccines has been going on for years at the CDC. Yeah. This is nothing. It's the same playbook.
Yeah, that's really why we sort of want to start with your testimony before COVID. Trish, how do you prepare? Do you get nervous when you're up there? Because you laid out a lot of information in a really quick time. So, what was that preparation like? And is it nerve-wracking or do you just dig,
Terrifying. Terrifying. I don't like to speak in public in the first place, but to stand up to people that you feel are the experts that have so much more knowledge and experience than you have. I mean, I have done deep dives on vaccine research, but to stand up to them is very intimidating.
Yeah.
At least you got to stand next to Paul Offit. I didn't get to do that.
I remember the first time I went to the advisory committee on immunization practices meetings was Aaron Siri said, we should go and check one of these things out. This is where it's all happening. This is where they're making the decisions. We got to try and nip this thing in the bud. And the first time we went there, no one had ever really thought of it. And I remember Paul Offit walked past me, and then I saw him turn around and walk past and then stand in the corner of the room is that who I think it is? So yeah, it's a room full of people that definitely believe in pharma. As you look at this year, looking back at those testimonies, and where we were at. We were having conversations about the vaccine program, the dangers, of course. Dr. New, you work as a functional medicine doctor trying to help people through vaccine injury. So this is, deeply a part of your wheelhouse and the work that you do. But when you look at what COVID has done since you stood in front of that ACIP meeting, do you feel like we're moving forward, we're moving backwards? What is your sense? Because, it's probably about 2 years ago now.
Yeah, I think that it's COVID has given not just the CDC, but I think the FDA as well. I don't know. They've given him courage pills to just go so far beyond what they were doing before. That whole speech about junk science. I mean, it's not junk science. It's total garbage trash. Should be burned in a burn pit kind of science now. I mean, it's just horrible. And they're not even pretending anymore. I mean, it's like, where did you come up with that recommendation? Oh, we thought it was a good idea. We've got 40 years of safely combining vaccines. Therefore, we can combine this vaccine with any other vaccine we want with absolutely no studies. It's not even bad science. It's no science at all. And it's just been mind-blowing that they keep pushing it further and further and further. And all these mainstream doctors that have gotten involved, God bless them all, but that have gotten involved, they really honestly believe that the rest of the vaccine schedule has been thoroughly evaluated, great safety studies, years of safety research on each of these vaccines. And they don't realize that is completely not true.
Yeah. There was just a ER physician on a TV station recently, and she spoke of how there were over 1 million children in the polio vaccine trials and over 1 million children in the chickenpox trials. And I'm like, you're just making this up.
Yeah.
There was never 1 million children in any vaccine study.
No,
Go
ever.
look at them. Yeah. So I remember the first time I came to ASAP, I just got on a plane and flew down there. I was watching your show in February. We were on a cruise and I'm sitting at the pool listening, and you're like, come on down. We got to check out what they're doing. And I'm like, hop on a plane. I go down there. I walk in there all by myself. I sit down and I start listening. You guys weren't even there yet. I think you were a little late. And I'm listening to this stuff and I'm looking through the slides and I'm like, this can't be real. This is not this is crazy. Yeah. And so I'd gone to 3 or 4 of them before. And finally, I drug him. I'm like, you can't watch a snippet. You can't read through the slides. You need to go sit in that room for 2 days and listen to what they're doing. Yeah. And I don't know how to get people to do that. Like it's 8 hours. It's a long day, but you've got to actually see what they're doing. And he was shocked. I tried to tell him, but he didn't.
It wasn't shock. No, she said, you got to go. I said, they're just going to piss me off. But you got to go. They're just going to piss me off. So she dragged me there, and guess what? They pissed me off. And you can't say anything. I mean, your head explodes. They say something, your head explodes, and then you just got to go, just say that.
It's absolutely crazy. But I think, when we look at it now, we were just a few, right? It started out as a handful of us, and then a dozen. Now, eventually, before we went to videos and I think the Zoom call, COVID couldn't get here fast enough. I mean, they were starting to rope us off, put us in other sections, bring in police guards as though all of the mommies and nurses and doctors that were getting to the microphone to speak were somehow dangerous. But we really messed up their country club, no doubt about it. Showing up, it started to end up being almost half the room where it used to be filled with just pharmaceutical executives. Now half of it was people speaking their truth. So it really felt awesome. And in many ways, maybe sort of drove us into this COVID pandemic where they seem to be just turning up the dial as fast as they can, trying to get to, leap forward to what I suppose was an end goal to force vaccinate all of us. And in that, this movement just seems to be exploding. And we're starting to see great testimonies. I mean, I have to say, one of the things, it was rare we would point out, hey, folks, check out how the Neuenschwanders are doing their testimonies. But now I'll say on every stage I speak on, the people that are getting up and the people that are talking are more informed than they ever were back when we started to do this. And they're giving dynamic, powerful speeches. So for that, today I'm really thankful and very excited about it. And I think that you guys in many ways sort of lit that fuse early on. And so, any last thoughts as we, look out to those that will be testifying and standing up to their, school boards and their health departments as these things get crazier and crazier?
Well, I always say hold their feet to the fire. You know, walk in educated, know the research, know the information ahead of time. So when they give you one of these CDC bullet points right off the website, I mean, you can go to the website ahead of time and you know what they're going to say.
Yeah.
When they pull off one of these bullet points, you can say, well, that's interesting, but did you know? The Tdap vaccine was studied on over 1 million women. Well, that's interesting, but did you know that they only studied it on 30 offspring of those women for more than 2 months?
Right.
So we're basing all this safety data on nothing. So the more educated you are walking in, the better you're going to be able to deal with whatever garbage is going to come from the other side, because it really is garbage. They don't, especially with COVID, they just don't have the data points to defend their position, to defend what they're doing. It's so not medical what the recommendations have become. And you can see it with what they did with the 5 to 11-year-olds. I mean, it's just, those recommendations are the most ridiculous thing I've heard out of the CDC.
And frankly, I don't think they're going to age very well. I mean, every time now I say, boy, you guys are you are digging a grave in the history books in the future. I mean, it's going to be horrible how they're looked upon. Yeah, Trish.
I was just going to say, and just come from the heart. I mean, that's when I'm trying to speak to them, I truly am trying to reach them. I truly am trying to communicate my concerns, my fears. They're genuine. I have nothing to gain and everything to lose by speaking out. And you're ridiculed. It's not an easy place to go, but if it's coming from your heart and you're sincere, that will carry through with what you're saying.
I totally agree, and that's a great point. I mean, and that's it. You only have 3 minutes. You can't really do too much wrong in 3 minutes. Get out the information you can, but appeal to their heart. They are human beings. I still believe when I'm talking to them, we can turn them. And frankly, when we first started talking, they had unanimous votes all the time, and then we're starting to really see a shift where we started to see those votes getting closer and closer to a divided voting group there. I think that's changed with the Zoom calls. Now, again, they feel like they're all alone. They're not being challenged. So we'll have to see that. But once again, thank you guys for your courage. Thank you for all of your help, the work that you do to help us do the work here at the High Wire. And I look forward to seeing you on a microphone somewhere out there very soon.
All right, Del. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Take care. Happy Thanksgiving.
Do what you're doing.
All right. Bye.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Well, next up, there are people that we know that are right here at the High Wire, but a lot of these videos today come from people I haven't even met yet. Some that are very talented broadcasters in their own right. This one is a brilliant testimony by a very famous blogger or vlogger, whatever you want to call it. This is Matt Walsh's testimony.
Hi, my name is Matt Walsh. I'm a community member in Nashville and a father of 4. You and the school board have decided that our kids should go to school all day, every day, wearing muzzles like rabid dogs. I have listened to your arguments, and I've noticed that they're missing a few things, namely evidence, data, science, common sense, and basic human decency. You've presented no facts at all, so let me do that now. Here they are. COVID poses almost no risk to our kids at all. 4.2 million children have tested positive for COVID. A total of 0.008% of them have died. What about the flu? The CDC estimates that 480 kids died from the flu in the 2018-2019 season. That's more than have died from COVID in a year and a half. Now, did anyone on this board suggest at any point that year that kids wear masks? Did anyone in this room suggest that at any point anyone wear masks for flu, which again is more dangerous to kids than COVID? That's a fact. Now, do you know what it's called when you force your children to wear masks for fear of a virus that poses almost no threat to them? It's called child abuse. You want to look up a disease, look up Munchausen by proxy, because that's what this is. If you think I'm exaggerating, then how would you respond to a parent who forced his kid to wear a football helmet every day, all day, for fear of falling coconuts and meteors? Your kid is almost as likely to die of COVID as he is from a rock from the sky, and yet if you saw that, you would say to that parent that he is abusive, that he is forcing his kid to participate in this utterly insane charade in order to satisfy his delusional, psychotic hypochondria. Now, do any of you know what sort of psychological damage we do to children by forcing them to cover their faces, teaching them that the air is toxic, that everyone around them is sick? Have you wondered about the health effects of forcing kids to breathe through sweat and spit and dirt-soaked rags every single day? What about learning to read and they can't see the teacher enunciating the words? What does it do to a child's developing immune system if he has to wear a mask all day, every day? You're satisfied to place this burden on children anyway. And why? It's not to keep them safe. They are safe. It's not to keep the adults safe. They can all get vaccinated if they want. No, you do it to make yourselves feel better and to protect yourselves politically. The child's mask is a symbolic security blanket for you, not them. It's a disgrace, and you should all be ashamed. Thank you for your time.
There's nothing like a healthy dose of sarcasm and condescension, which Matt Walsh delivers in a palpable statement there. A brilliant testimony coming from Nashville, Tennessee. Next up, we're going to head to Georgia, where a mother really let it rip. She is concerned about her children, her own children, masking, and all the rest. This is Courtney Ann Taylor.
If you truly mean that, you would end the mask requirement tonight. Tonight. This is not March 2020 anymore. We have 3 vaccines. Every adult in the state of Georgia that wants that vaccine is eligible to get it right now, and every one of us knows that young children are not affected by this virus. They're not, and that's a blessing. But as the adults, what have we done with that blessing? We've shoved it to the side and we've said, we don't care. You're still going to wear a mask on your face every day, 5- and 6-year-olds. You still can't play together on the playground like normal children, 7- and 8-year-olds. We don't care. We're still going to force you to carry a burden that was never yours to carry. Shame on us. My 6-year-old looks at me every month before I come here and she says, are you going to tell them tonight? Tell them I don't want to wear this anymore. And I say, baby, it's not time to fight that battle yet. I try to explain that there's so many things, but it's April 15th, 2021, and it's time. Take these masks off of my child. And I know what I'm going to be met with. But Ms. Taylor, the CDC, we did not vote for people at the CDC. We did elect leaders who do create policy. We elected the 5 of you. We chose you to make difficult decisions for our children. We chose you to make decisions that would be in our children's best interest, and forcing 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9-year-old little children to cover their noses and their mouths where they breathe for 7 hours a day, every day for the last 9 months for a virus that you know doesn't affect them. That is not in their best interest, and this has to stop. Defend our children. My 6-year-old can't come up here and say this. It has to stop. Take these off of our children.
Amazing, passionate, emotional testimony by Courtney Ann Taylor there in Georgia. And it just shows you, how different this can be, but how effective it is, right? Matt Walsh being sarcastic and cutting. And here you have a mother really just showing how passionately she cares about her child and what she expects from that school board that is supposed to be protecting these children. Just an amazing testimony there. Next up is a guy that went viral with his statement. He's seen it all. He's a physician's assistant. He's worked at the border of Texas and Mexico. He's seen the people coming in and going out, and he has seen the hypocrisy in how we're handling all these different situations. This is Miguel Escobar.
I am a physician assistant, and I've worked in healthcare for over 15 years. So I've had firsthand experience with COVID, especially before anybody in the media knew about it, because I have certain government clearance. So I'm here to talk about a lot of the misinformation that's out there. Number one, the case counts is absolutely obliterated. You could be run over by a car and you go into the ER, you say I'm short of breath because your blood is filling your lungs, and if they test you for COVID, you died of COVID, not a car accident. You could have known severe cardiovascular disease, which is what I'm partaking, and you come in with an absolute 100% heart attack, but they test you for COVID. What did you die of? COVID. What just happened about 2 weeks ago? CDC is now telling all the laboratories to stop using the PCRs that we've been using this whole time because they cannot decipher between the flu and COVID. So we have to stop using them. That information alone should stop this whole ridiculousness, okay? Number two, the masks. There are literally studies that I can prove to you that are on the CDC website that are randomized control studies that show that nor hand washing nor wearing surgical masks, especially anything less than that, actually prevents you from getting infected, whether if you're infected or you're trying to prevent an infection. You're a board for education, not health. There's never been a study on social distancing or any of these ridiculous partitioners that are in between you. So you're telling me that you're safe to breathe, but we're not safe to breathe? Even on the CDC, after 15 minutes of being in the same room with somebody, you're breathing in the same air. CDC, about a month and a half ago, changed the requirement for hospitals and clinics to count a COVID case. If you are now vaccinated, you don't have to register that person as a COVID case if they have COVID. Even if they're in the hospital and dying of COVID, if they were vaccinated, you don't have to count that as a COVID case. In 6 months, more people have died from this vaccine than in 20 years of every single vaccine given in America. Let that sink in. In 6 months, 12,000. And the VAERS reporting system, Harvard, who everyone should trust here, did a major study, and they found out that only 1% of all the adverse effects and deaths are actually reported. So imagine that. If 12,000 we know now have died, that's only 1%. 1%. I work with people who have COVID and not. I know more people that have died from the vaccine than that have died from the COVID. Your duty is to focus on our children's education, okay? And the buildings and whatnot that you have said, which is awesome that you take your pride in that. Not my child's vaccination status, okay? That is not your duty. And you should be worried about people wanting to vaccinate their children when this has killed more children than has ever happened in any history of vaccines. You can still get COVID if you are vaccinated. You can still spread COVID if you are vaccinated. That is a false statement if someone thinks that because you are vaccinated, you are not going to spread this. And the biggest one of all is that there is still no proof that a child has actually infected a teacher or caused a death in any school in the world. Why are we worried about our children? If you truly care about their safety and their wellness, then why hasn't anyone mentioned that children in 2020 increased their suicide rates by fivefold? Fivefold. Why are we so scared of germs? Germs are what create immunity in the body. And what vaccines and medicine is trying to mimic in our bodies is the immune system. There is nothing stronger than our own immune system. The only way you're not going to get sick of COVID, and the only way we're going to really help the community into lowering deaths of people that are going to die because they're unhealthy, is to eat healthy and be healthy. We're always going to live in infections. We're always going to live with diseases. The only way to get around that is live healthy, be healthy. So I implore you all, please look at the facts. Don't go by what the media says because it's straight up lies. Johns Hopkins just came out with a study with over 48,000 kids showing that no healthy child died of COVID, that the only children that died of COVID were the very severely ill, which most of those children can't even be in school. So get over the fear. The masks don't work, okay? Hug thy neighbor, love thy neighbor, and everything will be okay.
I mean, that was just an absolute masterclass in a few minutes delivered there. In that meeting. And looking back all the way in July, just look at how well that has aged, calling it out, saying this vaccine doesn't stop infection, doesn't stop transmission. When you look at just a month ago that our own CDC director finally admitted that. Miguel Escobar is someone I've had the opportunity to stand on stages with here in Texas. It is my honor to have him joining me right now. First of all, let me say happy Thanksgiving to you before we even get started. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dale. Yeah, happy Thanksgiving to you too and your whole team.
All right, awesome. Well, first of all, I mean, a lot of we've shown several testimonies now, and usually you see a script in their hands. I didn't see a script on that. Did you have that talk scripted at all, or how did you prepare to do what you were doing?
No, actually, I've researched a lot about COVID, so I can, talk about it pretty easily right off the hand. But they were allotting people 5 minutes to talk. Yep. So I had 5 points that I wanted to get through very quickly. But as I was talking, I could see that a lot of the board and the members, other people in the meetings, there was actually probably almost 50 people behind me, that everybody was very engaged. So I just kind of started adding more and more and more as I was talking. And I knew I was out of the 5-minute mark. So I just kept trying to cohesively kind of add information that was making sense to, basically the story that I was trying to give.
Yeah.
But there was a point there I was kind of just going against time and pressure, and I some people definitely called me out on a few very minor things, details that I said incorrectly. But overall, everything I said was 100% fact-based.
Yeah, I think they actually let you go well beyond that 5 minutes. I think if we're tracking right, we cut it down a little bit for today's show, but I think it came in at about 13 minutes. But all of it is just this brilliant flow where you're just flowing with it. It's kind of the approach I use too. I see that in you. I like to just go in there. Of course, I have the advantage that I talk about these things all the time, so it's not hard for me to just call upon, but it's kind of fun, right? Did you find yourself like surprised at some of the places you went? Like, oh, I wasn't planning on talking about that, and then you sort of wind your way out of it as you go?
Yeah, big time. I've had the honor of doing a few other interviews with people, and I don't ever write any of these talks down. I like public speaking. I like I appreciate the energy that you feel. The am I going to screw it up or am I not going to screw it up? But there was a few little things that I try to correct, and people who know me, they could see I was a little panicked to try to get some good information out there. But I like that thrill, speaking in front of your peers. Now, obviously, if that was in front of my medical colleagues, I would have been a little bit more on point, maybe cited a few sentences and whatnot. But I was trying to speak in general, people who do not open up a medical journal, people who do not, really investigate these things, or just simply turning on the TV. So I was trying to hit a wider audience.
Well, and it was very effective that way, because that video went absolutely viral. I mean, I know that, we've talked before. Yeah. You're building websites now and trying to handle like this onslaught of people that really want more information. And one of the things I think that makes you special, especially here in Texas, is, so many of us are sort of pigeonholed in, the society where we can speak to. You're really reaching out to the Latino community.
I'm going to continue this in Spanish, okay, in hopes to reach out more people in Spanish.
When you do that, do you find that they're, are they more informed? Are they less informed? Are they more prone to just do what they're told? What is it like speaking to that community specifically?
Yeah, it is cool to see the dynamics and see, because I'm Hispanic, and seeing how people in different, classes of society, how they react to the information. And for me in general, I feel like the Hispanic community is the most lost.
Los políticos en ese condado
Those that they may feel that they're very intelligent and they have the degrees behind their name. They feel that they've already found all the sources of info that they can rely on, so they don't have to do much research like most doctors, because they rely heavily on the few resources that they know will bring them good information. And so sometimes for me, they're the most lost. Whereas in the very bottom, are I would say almost indigenous population, because in the valley, South Texas, we have colonias, which are literal people come from the land, right? I mean, literal people that just walking over into this country, and they're setting up shop anywhere that they can. They don't have running water and electricity, nor sometimes do they have access to education, either from their homeland or where they're at now, but they question it more, right? I feel like, people that have what you want to say street smart, it's kind of like, you tricked me once, it's my fault, you tricked me twice.
Yeah.
I'm kind of starting to see a pattern here.
Right.
And so I feel like some of the lower socioeconomic classes are actually more aware of it, through time, Whereas
is-
the
is-
doctors,
Is that potentially too? I mean, I think when I think of those people, I even think back to my Native American roots. Those that are closer to the land, they remember, they're more involved. They don't have the money. They don't go to hospitals. They're still using grandma's secret recipes and all these things for the colds and the flus. I mean, they are really still in that sort of indigenous approach towards health and have a lot of remedies that most of us have forgotten about that are very effective and are probably, you know, the foundation for a lot of the drugs we take are based on that knowledge that came from, you know, our elders.
yeah, exactly. Especially in the Mexican culture, they're very tied with, you know, their natural medicines and whatever grandma did that was passed down by her grandma did, you know, and
Yeah.
things that work. But also in the Hispanic community, um, I would say more, especially in South America, there's the culture kind of surrounds the doctor, right? That you do what you got to do with your little tinctures and your alcohol-based rubs and whatnot. But at the end of the day, if the doctor, if your uncle, whoever that's the doctor, you pick up the phone and they say so, it's like, well, the doctor said so. And so, you know, a lot of the Hispanic community, they have that just, it's just, you know, rooted deep within our culture that you have to trust whatever the doctor says. And so right now, obviously these doctors they don't know, and that whatever they're putting out there, the patients are just going, yeah, well, I mean, what would I know? The doctor, they're smarter than me. They went to school. I don't know this. But the smart ones are starting to realize, well, my abuelito took HCQ or took ivermectin and because he had some lying around or whatever, and he's doing fine. And you know, just the same with the black community, any really lower socioeconomic community, when they know that something works, that's going to spread like wildfire, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what we're trying to do now here in South Texas is, you know, these doctors are literally attacking me, and they're not even willing to look at the information.
Yeah.
You know, very smart people, same thing, people in my community with you know, in my colleagues and where I work, they're not willing to look at that information. So right now, our little group, we go by Texas Light Guardians, we are really trying to hit the Hispanic, uneducated, if you want to say, or just people who are too entrusting of the government or any official that they should rightfully feel trusted for. But yeah, we're definitely going to try to spread more information through those.
What's the best way for
classes.
people to get involved with that work that you're doing? Do you have a website that we can sort of send people to right now?
Yeah, so right here under my name, TX for Texas, txlightguardians.com. We're about to put more info on there. You know, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm just trying to, with the help of others in my community, we're trying to keep it as a all-in-one place for COVID misinformation, where to get like the correct, you know, resources, but also where to get treatment, what pharmacies to find in Texas, out of Texas, you know, telehealth, also legal advice, exemption forms, which doctors will do this. What are the other next steps in this, which I'm not sure if you've heard about this, but we didn't really talk about it last time I was able to speak with you at TexasRightToKnow.com, the Omega Brief, which was done by our own Texan patriot here, who she went and gave the Omega, all the state and state senator
Talking
and
about Sheila
representatives
Hemphill,
here.
who does a great job.
Yes.
Is handing out the Omega Brief, and a lot of it brings in David Martin's, you know, discussions about patents and all of that. And she's really done a great job of affecting the politicians here in Texas and looking at this. So, I mean, it's just amazing, this team of people. And it's why I moved to Texas. Such a great network and community that's building here. And of course, you're a huge part of that. You know, when I think about this work, I want you to know we are working at the Highwire. We're trying to get to the place where we can start having our show, translated in different languages, whether it's, Spanish and even Russian. Some people in Russia are wanting it. All around the world, people need this information because it's really bringing us together. We're brothers and sisters, and on this Thanksgiving, I think it's beautiful to recognize that, no matter what side of any border you come from, on Thanksgiving, we are celebrating this together. And today, of course, we're celebrating those brilliant testimonies, yours being one of them. Miguel, I want to thank you for taking the time and just say, keep up the good work. You're really just doing outstanding work there. You're so eloquent, and I look forward to the next time we get to stand on a stage together.
Yeah, me too, Dale. I really appreciate your hard work and your team. And anytime you need some help translating, you guys have my emails. I'm more willing to help out. And
all right.
Happy Thanksgiving to you and your team.
Happy Thanksgiving. Take care, Miguel. Well, as you can see, it's amazing just to see all the different approaches towards the testimony. Of course, Miguel's got this ability to just sort of weave and move through it without a script. Others that have never done it before, maybe a script is a good way to go. But sometimes just, he went 13 minutes. Sometimes you can get it across in like a minute or a minute and a half. Just be passionate. Make sure you have the crowd with you. That's why we love this next one by Clay Travis.
Good evening. I'm Clay Travis. I have 2 kids in Williamson County Public Schools, 5th grader and a 1st grader, and you all should be ashamed of the choices that you are about to make. We teach our kids that facts matter. That's why they go to school. The facts are these: masks don't work. There isn't a single scientific data that has ever proven that masks work. Also, let's talk about risk analysis, which is the key. I feel bad for all these people walking around in masks, engaging in cosmetic theater, thinking that they are making a difference against COVID. They aren't. Here's the truth. Our kids, under 25-year-old, 1 in a million chance that they are going to die of COVID. They are more likely to be struck by lightning. They are more likely to be struck by lightning. They are more likely to die of the seasonal flu. Have any of you ever mandated masks for the seasonal flu? Well, shame on you, because every kid in Williamson County schools has been under more danger from the seasonal flu every year than they are for COVID. I would tell every parent here, don't let your kids wear masks. Refuse.
I have to say that Clay Travis, that one's after my own heart. One of the things to do is, sure, you're giving a testimony, but it's always good to get the crowd involved too. Sometimes that's maybe who you're talking to, and that passion, you can feel it. And can you imagine sitting at that school board meeting, listening to all of those people cheer as this guy sort of just lays out one truth bomb after another. This next testimony may be, one of the most succinct by a doctor that I've ever heard. It just really lays out, and you can tell that he has these, this health department or, who he's talking to really hanging on every word, recognizing, boy, he sure sounds like he knows what he's talking about, but it's not what we heard, from our health department. This one's fantastic. This is Dr. Stock.
It's hard to believe we're 18 months into this and still having a problem, and I would suggest the reason we still have a problem is because we're doing things that are not useful, and we're getting our sources of information from the Indiana State Board of Health and the CDC, who actually don't bother to read science before they do this. I'm actually a functional family medicine physician. That means I am specially trained in immunology and inflammation regulation, and everything being recommended by the CDC and the State Board of Health is actually contrary to all the rules of science. So things you should know about coronavirus and all other respiratory viruses: they are spread by aerosol particles, which are small enough to go through every mask. By the way, the literature that supports all of that is in a flash drive that we presented to you. It's been given to the Secretary. As a matter of fact, it quotes at least 3 studies sponsored by the NIH to that exact fact, even though the CDC and the NIH have chosen to ignore the very science that they paid to have done. That is why you keep struggling with this, is because you cannot make these viruses go away. The natural history of all respiratory viruses is that they circulate all year long, waiting for the immune system to get sick through the winter or become deranged, as has happened recently with these vaccines, and then they cause symptomatic disease. Because they cannot be filtered out, and they have animal reservoirs, and this is a very important point, no one can make this virus go away. The CDC has managed to convince everybody that we can handle this like we did smallpox, where we could make a virus go away. Smallpox had no animal reservoirs. The only thing it learned to infect was humans. That's why we were able to make that virus go away. That will not happen with this any more than it will with influenza, the common cold, respiratory syncytial virus, adenoviral respiratory syndromes, or anything else that has animal reservoirs. So the reason you can't do this is because you're trying to do something which has already been tried and can't be done. Equally important is that vaccination changes none of this, especially with this vaccine. And I would hope this board would start asking itself, before it considers taking the advice of the CDC, the NIH, and the State Board of Health, why we are doing things about this that we didn't do for the common cold, influenza, or respiratory syncytial virus. And then ask yourself, why is a vaccine that is supposedly so effective having a breakout in the middle of the summer when respiratory viral syndromes don't do that? And to help you understand that, you need to know the condition that is called antibody-mediated viral enhancement. That is a condition done when vaccines work wrong, as they did in every coronavirus study done in animals on coronaviruses after the SARS outbreak, and done in respiratory syncytial virus, where a vaccine used in a vulnerable individual done the wrong way, which cannot be done right for a respiratory virus which has a very low pathogenicity rate, causes the immune system to actually fight the virus wrong and let the virus become worse than it would with native infection. And that is why you are seeing an outbreak right now. And in fact, in that flash drive you're going to have coming to you and in the emails with 6 Extra will be a study showing that 75% of people who had COVID-19 positive symptom cases in Barnstable, Massachusetts outbreak were fully vaccinated. Therefore, there is no reason for treating any person vaccinated any differently than any person unvaccinated. You should also know that no vaccine, even the ones I support and would give to myself and my children, ever stops infection. In 2014, there was outbreak of mumps in the National Hockey League. The only people who came down with symptoms were the people who were unvaccinated or unknown vaccine status. Boy, that sounds like a great argument for vaccines. But a question that you should ask yourself, knowing that half of the people who came down with symptomatic disease had no contact with an unvaccinated or unknown vaccine status individual, where did they get the disease? And the answer was from the vaccinated individuals. No vaccine prevents you from getting infection. You get infected, you shed pathogen. This is especially true of viral respiratory pathogens. You just don't get symptomatic from it. So you cannot stop spread. You cannot make these numbers that you've planned on get better by doing any of the things you're doing, because that is the nature of viral respiratory pathogens. And you can't prevent it with a vaccine because they don't do the very thing you're wanting them to do. And you will be chasing this the remainder of your life until you recognize that the Center for Disease Control and the Indiana State Board of Health are giving you very bad scientific guidance. And instead, read the articles that are going to come on the email and are on this flash drive, and listen to the people in this audience here tonight who actually have recognized the advice they are getting from the CDC and the NIH is counterfactual. And that's why you're still fighting this with this vaccine that supposedly was going to make all of this go away, but has suddenly managed to make an outbreak of COVID-19 develop in the middle of the summer when vitamin D levels are at their highest. By the way, the other thing that would be necessary, any vaccine restriction to be considered, is if there were no other treatment available. And I can tell you, having treated over 15 COVID-19 patients, that between active loading with vitamin D, ivermectin, and zinc, that there is not a single person who has come anywhere near the hospital. And we already have studies that show that if you achieve a 25 hydroxyvitamin D level greater than 55, your risk of COVID-19 death will drop down to 1/4 of the population average for the United States. And there are active treatment trials included on that flash drive that show the same is true. So if you were going to discriminate based upon vaccine, you should also discriminate based upon 25 hydroxyvitamin D level, zinc taste test response, and probably previous infection, since there are also studies on that flash drive that show that people who have recovered from COVID-19 infection actually get no benefit from vaccination at all, no reduction in symptoms, no reduction in hospitalization, and suffer 2 to 4 times the rate of side effects if they are subsequently vaccinated. Therefore, the policies that you are basing on are totally counterfactual. I don't blame this board for that, because I know you aren't scientists and you've thought it was reasonable to listen to the CDC, NIH, and the Indiana State Board of Health. But I would encourage that instead you listen to the people out here in this audience and read what's on that data drive. And if anybody here in this board has any questions about anything on that, I will happily come back and sit with you individually if you would like to explain the science behind this. And if you're worried about being sued by somebody because you don't follow the guidance of the CDC and the NIH, I will tell you have a free pro bono expert testimony at your disposal. I will testify in defense of this board, turning down all these recommendations for free at any time in any court. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I love that one. That one's like watching an entire Higher Wire episode broken down in about 6.5 minutes. And just like the High Wire, he shows his work. He is offering a thumb drive. Great idea. Just like we offer you the opportunity to see all of the evidence of what we're talking about. All you have to do is sign up to our newsletter. So I love Dr. Stock's testimony there. And as we're talking about it, you know, if you're thinking this Thanksgiving you've done really well and you've been really thankful for the work that the High Wire has done, and you've seen this shift in this conversation, and you're seeing the education coming from the Informed Consent Action Network, I think many of the people making these speeches are making them using those white papers that are provided on the website at ICanDecide.org. That is our website where we put up all the science information that we have researched and many of the stuff that's led to sort of our legal wins by our legal team headed by Aaron Seary. But for all of you out there, all of this is made possible. The ability for us to do this research, to present our work, to make sure that you have it, to put on this great show, none of this would be possible without you. So this Thanksgiving, I really want to give a shout out to you, especially those of you that have been recurring donors, that have stood with us through all of this. You have made so many miracles possible. You must know, as I travel this country, how many people come up to me and say, Del, you saved my niece's life. You saved my aunt's life. You saved my brother's life. You know, they weren't listening. And finally, you know, I had them watch the High Wire. You don't get to hear that, but I want you to know that you should be thankful and know that simply by donating to the High Wire, you are saving people's lives. And for those of you out there on this Thanksgiving thinking, you know, I'd like to be able to say I'm saving people's lives, and maybe you haven't decided to donate yet, why don't you do it now? Why don't you go while you have the time today to thehighwire.com. All you have to do is go up to that Donate to ICAN button and become a recurring donor. This gives us the ability to know how much budget we have, what lawsuits we can take on, how many film crews we can set out to the different rallies or different stories of vaccine injury. All of that obviously decides on where our budget is at, and you make that possible. So whether it's a cup of coffee, maybe it's a pumpkin pie. How about one pumpkin pie every month? We're talking about $15 a month would be fantastic. Of course, in 2021, we're asking for $21 a month if you can do it. And if you have had a really good year, maybe you want to do even more than that. All of it, though, makes it possible. And for everyone watching, whether you can donate or not, we are here for you. Our information is transparent. Sign up to that newsletter. Just go to thehighwire.com, sign up to that newsletter so that you always have that evidence in your hands. Now, some of you might be sitting there and saying it's a little intimidating watching a Dr. Stock who doesn't even have a script, much like Miguel Escobar, and is just laying out fact upon fact that is all going to appear in a thumb drive. And you're thinking, man, I'll never be able to achieve that. There's, why bother? I'd like to say to you, sometimes you don't have to be that educated. It's really just as easy. It's so easy that a child could do it. At least a really, really smart child. This is Nova Lee.
My mom told me if I got scared, just picture the crowd naked. But don't worry, you still have your mask on in my head. Hi, my name is Nova Lee. Hi, my name is Nova Lee. I'm 9 years old in 4th grade at Lakeview Elementary. My purpose tonight is to explain my point of view on how this year and how it affected me. I hate masks. I hate social distancing. I hate distant learning. I hate constantly being told what to do. I hate teachers say when this is the new normal. And I hate being treated like a little germ no one can touch. The school is trying to take away my right to tell people what I think and feel, and I cannot say anything but what their point of view is. They have taken our freedoms. I can't even pick out where I play at recess, and now they pick out who I play with, and these ridiculous zone things make no sense. They even control my breathing. They make us wear masks outside when we're lining up. When I simply ask why, they say, oh, just for safety reasons. They blame everything in the name of safety. I don't even know why they keep the masks on children, because deep inside, none of them like it. Masks are suffocating. Kids are constantly gasping for air. My little sister's friends are always bullying her into fear that she needs to have her mask on. My little brother Hollis did not recognize his teacher without his mask on. It was not until the teacher walked past and he saw the teacher from the behind. Also, when some of my friends take off their masks, they have red rashes on their face where the masks are. It makes me sick when I hear kids yelling at other kids to put their masks on, or when I hear teachers say, "You're going to kill everyone if you don't have your mask on." When Trump was in office and I would talk about him at school, all the teachers would say, "Oh, we don't talk about that." Now, when we talk about Biden, a liar, cheater, and a promise breaker, it's totally acceptable to talk about him. I think that's double standard. School is supposed to be a place where you learn many points of views, not just one. Everything is always being respectful, and people just can't take a little criticism or a different opinion. Please stop this madness. Stand up for us and get rid of the constraints. Courage is contagious, so be courageous.
Well, it's my honor and pleasure to be joined now by future President of the United States, Nova Lee, and her mother, Kaylin. Nova Lee, that is quite a testimony. Did your mom make you do it?
No, she didn't make me do it. One time she was thinking of going to a school board meeting, and I'm like, "Can I write a speech?" And she's like, "Sure." So I wrote one and I gave it to her, and she's like, "Okay, you can do it." So that's kind of how it all started.
So Kaylin, when she came to you and said, I want to give a speech too," was that a surprise? Is this in her nature? I mean, does she tend to just stand up and speak her mind wherever she is?
Yeah, she stands up and speaks her mind wherever she is. At first I said no, and then she wrote a speech, and then I read it, and it was really good. So I was like, "Go for it if you can do it." I mean, she's never had any practice. This is just kind of her.
All right, fantastic. Nova Lee, what did you think was important when you thought you were going to write a speech? I think part of writing a good speech is knowing who you're talking to and what you want to get across. What was the main thought that sort of drove your speech when you were thinking of what you wanted to say?
Well, I just really wanted kids to have courage and stand up for themselves, so that was kind of why I did it mainly. And that was kind of the thought I had. But I also, at that time, the speech you played, I was really mad and frustrated about the mask. So it kind of depends the topic I'm talking about.
And you do. You have several videos that have gone viral. You are very good at this. You spoke at the Capitol in Minnesota when I was up there just a few weeks ago. You were spectacular. You have a real control of the mic. Do you get nervous?
Oh, well, I mean, a little bit, but I just get up there and I'm fine.
Yeah. Are you in theater? Is this do you express yourself? No. You're just a natural speech writer and talker. Kaylin, you have come under a lot of heat, from different articles and newspapers saying this mother is so angry about masks or vaccines or whatever, she's forcing her child to give these speeches. What do you want to say to those accusations or those people out there, the haters, as we call them?
I think I would say to the haters, if you went to her school and talked to her teachers and her principals, you would understand that this isn't, as I believe what she believes, this is her voice, and I'm not forcing her to do anything. And I think every day I ask her, is this something you want to do? What does this mean to you? And every time she's like, absolutely, I am so sick of this. And I think that we forget that kids have voices, and I think parents don't listen to their kids, and I think that they don't understand. There's a lot they have to say. And she knows that. I mean, she's had many conversations, and she can tell you too about that.
Yeah. So Nova Lee, when you think about children, so many are afraid to talk, and the masks, it's almost like it's making them more intimidated instead of, they're hiding behind them. Are you concerned about the future of your generation? Are they going to get through this, or do you think they're just going to shut down and sort of lose an identity in all of this?
Well, yes, I am kind of scared about my generation because a lot of them, they're for example, in front of other kids about the masks or whatever, they're like, "Oh yeah, this is horrible. We hate this, blah, 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 blah." But in front of the adults, they act just like normal. Everything's fine.
They don't tell the adults what they really think.
Yeah. So yes, I am kind of scared that they're just if the kids stood up for themselves and they actually said what they think, most of the kids did what they thought, this would probably be over.
Right. Now, are you intimidated or are you worried? Have you gotten any pressure from your school or the school nurses, or, you're starting to become a household name as you are on stages speaking at events now all over the place. You're becoming quite the hit. Is that celebrity getting in your way at school at all? Is anyone getting upset with you?
Well, no, I wouldn't say so.
All right.
At least they don't tell us. I mean, I'm sure behind closed doors we see it. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen screenshots. We just choose not to engage in that or look at that.
All right. Well, Novalee, you are truly a superstar. It's an honor the time, that I got to stand on you on the stage. I'm sure we're probably going to do that again soon. So, keep strong. Keep that voice out there. It's really exciting to try and imagine where someone at your age, and how old are you, by the way? I'm sure a lot of people are wondering right now. How old are you?
I'm 10 now.
You're 10 years old now. And so at 10 years old, to think that you've got this ability to just so naturally speak, to have that passion, that courage, to stand in your strength, you really are a leader in your generation. But the truth be told, you're a leader for the adults now too. I think there's a lot of people watching this show right now thinking, man, if she can do it, I should probably step up and do it too. So keep up the good work. It's really impressive. Stay focused on your school though, get your education, and I can't wait to see what you grow up to be. It's pretty exciting.
Thank you.
All right, fantastic. Well, we're winding it down here, just a couple of more to go. So inspiring to see a young girl that's able to speak so clearly like that. And in many ways, as we're raising kids, don't you want to aspire to have children that speak their minds? I mean, so many, when I think about, that old idea of, you want your children to be seen but not heard. I remember as I started having kids and reading books about it, I remember at one point they were saying, is that really what you want? I remember talking to one person who said, I was sitting on an airplane and there was a young kid there and, they were really quiet. And at the end of the flight, the person sitting next to them said to the parent, great job raising your kid. You barely knew they were there. And, the friend said, can you imagine if you found out as an adult your child was working somewhere and the boss came and says, oh man, we love your kid. We barely know they're there. I think that that's part of the problem with our education system, and it's our job to make our kids step up and find their power, their strength, such a huge part of how we're going to transition this world into a better place. We're going to be in the war, and I've said we're going to see the end of this war, but who's going to carry the truth forward into that beautiful new world with more advanced thinking, critical thinking, and technologies and medicine and all that is possible if we actually use our minds and use our voices. Speaking of using your mind and using your voice, this is a fantastic testimony by Dr. Christina Parks, who really lays out just so beautifully the details. And what I love about it is she's so brilliant. She lays it out. She's speaking for everybody. And also one of her passions is representing people of color, saying that, you know what, we are concerned about this too. And she does an outstanding job. Here is Dr. Christina Parks.
Hello, my name is Dr. Christina Parks. I received my PhD in cellular and molecular biology right here in the state of Michigan from University of Michigan Medical School. And so I'm very well versed in the science of both these mRNA, gene therapy, vaccines, this kind of technology, as well as what a vaccine is designed to do in the body, what it can do, what it can't do, and the fact that this is extremely complex science that has been oversimplified in the media to basically take away our freedom of choice. What I want to address today in this limited time is the fact that vaccine requirements and mandates are based on the faulty assumption that the vaccines in question prevent transmission of the pathogen, right? Does the vaccine for DTaP prevent transmission? No. Does the vaccine for flu prevent transmission? No. Do the vaccines for COVID prevent transmission? No. In fact, they were never designed to do that. All right, so you're asking, what about this 95% effectiveness? If you look at those clinical trials, they do not say that they prevent transmission. They expressly say that they're measuring whether they attenuate symptoms. So they're 95% effective based on their clinical trials at attenuating symptoms for the first variant, which is essentially gone in our population. Right now, the predominant variant is the Delta, and CDC Director Walensky basically said that these vaccines have no ability to prevent infection by and transmission of the Delta variant. So Our policy needs not to be built on the hope of what we think something we want it to do, but what the data actually tell us. So do these viruses prevent do the vaccines prevent the virus from infecting and replicating in the nose and nasopharynx? No. They've only been shown to prevent that replication in the lungs. They're different. The mucosa is very different than the lungs. It's very different than the blood. You inject it to the blood, you make antibodies in your blood. The virus isn't infecting your blood. It's infecting your mucosa, and you don't produce any IgA to neutralize it. In fact, recent studies have shown that the vaccinated, especially with the Delta variant, and the unvaccinated have similar amounts of virus in their nose and throat. In Barnstable, Massachusetts, the CDC tracked an outbreak of 469 cases of COVID. 74% occurred in fully vaccinated, and 4 out of 5 of those hospitalized were vaccinated. All right, so maybe they are mandating this because they just didn't know with the COVID. And so my main complaint is with our health agencies and the CDC, who basically know better and are misleading the public. So let's look at DTaP, which the scientists and the CDC have known since 2014 that the acellular pertussis vaccine does not prevent people from getting infected with the pertussis bacteria and passing it to others. In fact, it was never designed to do that. The vaccine was designed to neutralize the pertussis toxin. Pertussis, we know it as whooping cough. It can be fatal for children under 6 months. So neutralizing this toxin saves lives, all right? I'm not going to debate that. But what it doesn't do is neutralize the bacteria. So what happens is fully vaccinated children go to daycare, they pick up that bacteria, and they come home and they give it to their newborn brother or sister. They get deathly ill, and they go to the hospital. Hopefully, our medical professionals are able to save them. But who do they blame? Now the CDC is blaming anti-vaxxers for the limitations of this vaccine design. I suggest that they be transparent and tell parents that although it is preventing severe disease in their children, it is not preventing transmission, because we have created a whole class of asymptomatic pertussis carriers who are increasing the disease. Now, the old DTP vaccine that many of you who are my age or older got did prevent transmission. When we switched to the safer acellular version, they knew that it was never designed to prevent transmission. It was safer, it had less adverse events, but pertussis cases have gone through the roof. There's a resurgence in pertussis because of the design of the vaccine, and the vaccinologists know this. They're trying to address it, and so we cannot mandate that something that does not prevent transmission. All right, what about the flu vaccine? Well, they have shown that basically there's no difference, there's no statistical difference if you're vaccinated or unvaccinated, whether you get the flu or not. But it's even worse because although that first year it is somewhat effective, it's about 65% effective at preventing symptoms in you, after that it actually has negative efficacy. And I want to address this because it's very important. Vaccines are made to a specific variant, and when that variant mutates, the vaccine no longer recognizes it. And so it's like you're seeing a completely new virus. And because that's so, you actually get more severe symptoms when you're vaccinated against one variant, and then it mutates, and then your body sees the other variant. So there's the potential, and the science shows that, in fact, with the flu, if you get vaccinated in multiple years, you are more likely to get severe disease, you are more likely to have more viral replication, and you are more likely to be hospitalized, both in adults and in children. We are seeing the same thing in COVID with the Delta variant. And so we are mandating that people get a vaccine that could actually make them more sick when they're exposed to the virus. In fact, this week, a paper came out, and what it showed is that with this Delta variant, when you're vaccinated, your body makes antibodies that are supposed to neutralize the virus, but they were supposed to neutralize the old variant. When they see this new variant, what they're doing is the antibodies are taking the virus and helping it infect the cells. All right, that science was just published this week. We need to be looking at the science, and we need our policy to reflect the science, and we also need it to reflect our rights. Okay. And so, as a PhD who knows the science, I'm in the category of the most vaccine hesitant group. Yes, PhDs are the most vaccine hesitant, followed by people who have less than a high school degree because they know what they don't know and they don't trust their government. And many people, the other group that is very vaccine hesitant are African Americans. 70% of African Americans have not taken this vaccine. Why? Because they don't trust their government. Do they have reason not to trust their government? Well, between the years of 1930 and 1970, the CDC conducted the Tuskegee experiment, where they took untreated males with syphilis and they refused to treat them. Even after antibiotics became available, they still did not treat them, and they did not tell them that they had syphilis. They told those people that they were there to secure their health, and they did not secure their health. They abused them. You say, well, that was in the past, although I don't think 1970 was that long ago. Well, in 2012, whistleblower William Thompson came forward and said, we published a study that said MMR does not cause autism, but we lied. In fact, we shredded data that showed that when black boys are vaccinated on time, they have increased rates of autism diagnosis. And we shredded it and we left it out of the paper. As an African American and a PhD, I want to ask each of you, are we going to exclude 70% of African American people from the workforce and from education? Right, my ancestors did not work this hard. I come from a family that worked very hard, and I'm very aware that my privileges are dependent on the work of my grandmother and my great-grandmother, and I have great respect for these people that put me where I am. And yet you're telling me that my son will not be able to be educated if, based on the history of African Americans in this country, that he doesn't want to be vaccinated? All right, so I will leave you with that question. Who are we going to exclude from the workforce? Are we going to continue with discrimination and segregation in the United States of America? Thank you.
Well, Dr. Christina Parks, obviously it was a fantastic, one of the world's best, you know, when you think of testimonies. She was going to be with her family on Thanksgiving and happened to be swinging through town just the other day here in Texas. So I sat down with her and had a conversation both about her perspective of this issue, about her testimony, and the work that she's doing, you know, starting to speak on people's cases. She's getting involved in legal cases and going to try and help defend people that are finding themselves confronted with this vaccine issue. This is our sit-down interview that happened just a couple of days ago. I am honored to be joined by Dr. Christina Parks.
Thank you, Dal.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in, and thank you for standing up for the truth in these situations. It's testimony like that I think, you know, whether or not it wins the day or wins the moment, I think you start planting seeds and people start asking themselves some questions about, maybe I haven't been told the truth. I mean, at least that's what I hope is happening, because I do the same thing. You know, you're looking at these politicians. They didn't go to medical school. They're not a cellular and molecular biologist like you are. So let me try to break it down for them. Did you feel like when you were giving that testimony, did you feel like you had their attention? Were there some people maybe thinking, you know, I know the health department's told me something totally different, but what was your sense in the room?
Yeah, I did. There was incredible energy in the room. There were a lot of people, a lot of medical professionals that were being mandated with the vaccine coming. And a lot of people, you know, a lot of people were thanking me. And I feel like, well, it didn't go anywhere. It didn't do anything. And they said, no, you're my voice. You're my voice. I can't articulate the science. And I've had person after person say, I sent this to my parents. I sent this to my family. I sent this to my friends, because people told me, I can understand this. I can understand what you're saying. And it's breaking down the complex science in a way people can understand and giving them a voice.
Now, this video went viral, of course, been attacked by a lot of people from the other side trying to debunk the points that you're making. What does that feel like? I mean, you know, is this sort of the first time you've sort of been in the limelight there and find yourself being attacked by people you've never met before?
It is. I've kind of kept a low profile. I've been speaking out for quite some time, but this it went viral, and it was just a homeschool mom that clipped it, because you know those things go like 4 hours.
Yeah.
She clipped mine. She was a nobody. She put it on YouTube. It went viral before they realized it. And so, yeah, it is the first time that I've been debunked. Honestly, I'm very secure in my knowledge of the science.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't bother me at all. And a lot of times they start out with this, well, this is completely wrong. And then they get into all this scientific jargonese where they basically almost say I was right.
Right.
But nobody knows that because it's of the science. And so is complex. And so I'm reading it going, is that all you got?
Right.
But, many people don't know that, so they might think it's actually, they're debunking me.
Right.
But in the end, they're going to look at what I did and decide whether they think it's credible or not.
Right.
And I did, where I published it on Facebook or different places where it was, I put all my references. So it's
Right.
fully referenced.
Right. Fantastic. So let me ask you then on a more personal level, you go to school, you study, cellular and molecular biology. A lot of people don't get that deep into these types of conversations, but I happen to know that in that sort of education process, there's a lot of pharma funding that's going into these universities. There's a lot of funding that goes into that education, and a lot of people come out just really super pro-vaccine. So coming out of a system, knowing what you know, when did you start having questions? Is it just COVID-19? Because what I found interesting about this testimony was you didn't just talk about COVID-19 vaccines, which is what we tend to see, right? There's a lot of scientists and doctors now like saying, hey, I'm not anti-vax, I love all the other vaccines, it's just this one, too rushed, too fast. But you pointed out things that we've known to be true. DTaP vaccine, the pertussis, is not stopping transmission. In fact, we have that sort of linked epitope suppression issue, which means you're going to get infected more often than somebody that gets a natural infection. So when you started sharing things like that, I said, whoa, she knows a whole lot more than just the problems with the COVID-19 vaccine. And we have like these new members to this conversation that, are new because of coronavirus vaccine, but they really haven't looked at the other vaccines. There's issues there too. So how did you come to that knowledge? Because it must be more, longer than a year and a half ago when COVID started.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, I may look young. I'm not as young as I look. I graduated in 1999 with my PhD, and it took me 8 years to get it, and 4 years of an undergraduate degree before that. But so things were actually a little bit different. There wasn't quite as much pharma funding.
Okay.
But in fact, I work in signaling, and so you can inhibit signaling pathways, and they started to do that with drugs, and I think that was sort of the beginning of all this infiltration. And many of the medications out are actually monoclonal antibodies. And so a lot of that, I think, probably put a lot of the funding into it. And so I kind of got out before that, and things were very different then. It was understood that you should give as few vaccinations as possible because we didn't really know that much about the immune system. In fact, I worked in cytokine signaling, which is how your immune system signals. And so we were just defining the receptors. That's how little we knew back then. We had just come across something called interferon gamma. And I worked on growth hormone, and it used the same molecules to signal. We were just introducing those. And I remember it was kind of a watershed moment when I found out that we had this signaling molecule, interferon, that could activate your body to kill viruses. We thought there was nothing you could do, but in fact, your body has its own natural system for killing virally infected cells, and it's interferon mediated, dependent on vitamin D. So side effect, take your vitamin D, everybody.
Right.
A side note. And so nobody that I talked to was like really pro-vax. They were like, well, no, you should only get a vaccine if the disease really is so serious that you really need to protect yourself. And so when they put chickenpox on the schedule, I remember talking to my colleagues, and we were all like, why did they do that? It's not worth monkeying with the immune system for. And then they moved the vaccines under 2. And I'm like, weren't we all just taught that the immune system isn't developed enough until after the age of 2? So with these little things weren't lining up. And I remember the Andrew Wakefield thing, and I thought, what happened there? What did they run him over for? Because there was corroborating data from other labs that were saying that maybe there were chronic measles infections in the gut in some of these people. There was other things happening at the time that corroborated what he was doing. And so I didn't know why he was just sort of run over, because I thought it was an interesting scientific question. I didn't have any, horse to run in that race. And so there was some skepticism. And so I watched as things became more and more pro-vax and more, and I had these questions. And in fact, as I taught in high school, I got out of science. I said, this is going to be the issue of our day, because there just kept being more and more and more added to the schedule. And so I had these questions. And then I found some people online like Suzanne Humphreys that had done a great job researching it. And I was off to the races, researching what she had said. Then I found that PubMed was online. Now, this is the database that scientists use to publish their data. And it used to only be scientists could access it from a subscription if you had a lab and you had to pay for it. And when I found out you could Google the name of a paper, I brought up papers. Then you look in the references. That's what scientists do.
Right.
They do a deep dive. And so I just started researching, piles of paper on my computer in the corners. And I kept thinking, well, maybe it's just this vaccine that's a problem. And then there'd be an issue with another vaccine. And so it was, I wanted to know, because I wasn't like a globally anti-vaccine. I don't have a vaccine-injured child. I just wanted to understand what was going on here. And as I researched, it was just a very deep rabbit hole to go through. And I think what the watershed moment was when I realized in 1986 that the vaccine manufacturers didn't have liability. They were given a free pass not to have to answer to anyone for the quality of their product. And that's why many of the scientific issues that didn't make sense to me as far as safety or efficacy were concerned were allowed to go on.
Right. Now, I know that there's going to be a lot of pressure on you because you sort of really stepped into a very sensitive space in this country, not just with vaccinations, but socially when you bring up the African American community. Now, there are going to be those that are saying, Dr. Parks, you are putting the African American community at high risk by expressing any concern with this vaccine. We're having trouble getting them to believe in this vaccine. And as a woman of color, you are representing them. And now you are going to be responsible for the fact that they're going to, have hesitancy when they look at this vaccine. Is it right for you to do that? Obviously it was something that was very important to you to express that. There is going to be that criticism. What do you say to those people that are, criticize bringing the African American community into this conversation?
I'm very comfortable with that because my job is to tell the truth as a scientist. And I'm very much into epigenetics and into, different genetic profiles. And we know that African Americans have many genetic susceptibilities that have not even been addressed. They have many mutations in their hemoglobin molecules, many thalassemias and things that when those red blood cells are stressed, they blow up. Or glucose 6 phosphate dehydrogenase. When that system is stressed, it just devolves. And so we also know that they respond to vaccines by making twice or more of the antibodies than their Caucasian counterparts. None of this is being taken into account. And so I'm here to say, no, not good enough. I'm very mad. It's bad enough that they're destroying the brains of our little black boys because we knew since 2002 that the MMR was affecting them differently, and we did nothing about it. And so, no, I'm very angry about it. I'm very angry that on one hand we say, well, we really care about you, Black Lives Matter, and on the other hand we say we're not going to make this a unique a decision for you. And I do want to talk about it, which you well know that we have treatments. There's another way we can do this. But our doctors aren't being doctors anymore. They've been told from on high, this is what you're going to do. One size fits all, doesn't matter who you are. Not okay. And so I really want to, really advocate for individualized health care. Where we take, what happened in Italy, they have many of the same mutations because they're protective from malaria. And so they were in that malaria belt. And so when we saw all the death and destruction in Italy, and it was breaking my heart, I had to wonder if some of that, because this was from COVID I'm talking about, was a predisposition because when that system was stressed, if they had some of those mutations, they were going to desaturate faster. They weren't going to be able to keep oxygen in their blood. And so, it was very frustrating to me that we're advocating a one-size-fits-all for vaccination when we're not looking at any of those factors.
So now, obviously, your knowledge is super deep on this, and I'm totally, intrigued by the things that you're discussing. You are, though, taking your knowledge. You have, been on certain cases in courts, sort of representing people on vaccine issues. Just tell me about that work.
Well, I first started with a few custody cases. Moms who had maybe vaccinated their child and seen some side effects and then started to research it and said, I'm not comfortable with this. My child seems to be predisposed. And in fact, some of them actually came with, and that's where it started, they had done the genetic testing and said, I can't interpret this. And I said, I can, and I'm willing to spend the time to figure it out. And I said, you've got a mutation in your vitamin D receptor. So you're not processing vitamin D correctly. And so if you get vaccinated, you're going to be susceptible to hyperinflammation. And so I went and testified before the judge about these possible possibilities. Other ones were with the COVID vaccines. I've done some written reports and things, basically collating a lot of the science because it's a job of a scientist to be interested, to be curious. And so that's where I sort of went, because once you have one issue, then I'd want to find out about this. I'd have a question about that. I'd have a question about that. So I was just following my own curiosity. So I do have a breadth in this field because I was able to access those scientific literature online. And so, and what my gift is, I've been a high school teacher, and I took some time out to homeschool.
So you know
my
how to
kids.
make things make sense too.
That's the whole point, yes. And
That's
so
excellent.
that's where my expertise plus my ability to explain it was really ideal for court cases, because they're not experts in science, and so they need it explained in a way that can really make sense to them.
And of course, America's frontline doctors have reached out to you. You're doing some writing, I understand, for them.
I am,
and
yes.
trying
I'm
to-
doing some affidavits for some court cases for them
Great.
on the science, laying it out.
Fantastic. Well, look, every time I meet a warrior out there that's, speaking the truth, not afraid, for people that are watching right now, there's other academics like you that have the same knowledge. They're watching this crime take place. They're watching treatments not being used, but they're afraid. They're afraid to speak their truth. What would you say to those people out there right now in this time where we're seeing these mandates coming, and it's really not based on science? It's almost like a cult, like some sort of religious belief in a product that hasn't been tested. How do we get through to those academics out there that could make a difference?
Right. And actually, when some people asked me, I said, well, I'm really busy. And I said, what about the people that wrote these papers I'm citing? They said, we've already reached out to them. Because all of the funding is funneled down from the NIH or down from these centralized agencies, it's the end of their career. They have invested 25 years, and this would be the end of their career, they feel, if they spoke out. So I understand the reticence, but at the same time, I gave some advice to my son. I said, in the end analysis, I don't know if happiness is the right word, but your contentment with yourself and your life is going to be based on who you are. If you've made decisions that you are not comfortable with, you will never be at peace, and you can have $1 million and you won't be happy. And I said, and if you end up in a prison cell, which some of us are a little bit worried about now and again, it may not be pleasant, but you will have peace with who you are. And I would ask, if you do not stand up now, are you ever going to have peace with the decision you made in this time, in this place?
That's right. You could end up being in prison for the rest of your life in your own guilt over what you knew and what you didn't do. It's just a pleasure and honor to meet you. Keep doing the brilliant work you're doing and waking up people. It's just great to know there's other people out there.
Thank you. You too,
effort.
Dal.
All right. Awesome. All right. Well, I want to thank Dr. Christina Parks, who took time to swing through our studio here in Texas. Wherever you are out there, Dr. Parks, happy Thanksgiving. What a beautiful interview. It was an honor to get a chance to sit down with you. We have one last interview here, and I think it encompasses sort of the best of everything you've seen. It's fully unscripted. It recognizes it has an audience. It recognizes who it's talking to. This testimony is really almost untouchable. It's from the hip. It's from the heart. And it's going to grab yours.
Hello, my name is Sayla Cook, and I do not like these masks. And this building is about, I forgot his name, but he saved the black people and to be free, so they didn't have to do certain things. And we need to be free too. It's not just the black people that have to be free. Everybody has to be free. And these masks are just terrible. And I remember I saw Mr. Fishbone pulling his masks under his nose. And I'm pretty sure that was your rule. And these masks are horrible. And one of my friends said that his friend fainted because of a mask. Wow, congrats. And you don't even know how these other kids feel. They're breathing in the same dirty air, and my cousin said they're afraid to take off the masks. Great job. You're creating public schools with fearful children. Wow. I'm so proud of you guys. Wow, amazing. And I don't think barely anybody likes masks in schools. Their children are suffocating. You don't know what it feels like, and it's nonsense. Seriously. Like, why would you do that? Why in the world would you do that? And God created us so we can be free people. And we're not being free here or at public schools, okay? So I would take your masks off if I were you. And I'm not wearing a mask right now, and I never will as much as I can. And George Washington made America so we could be free citizens of the United States of America. And the Statue of Liberty is for liberty and freedom, and we're not free. So maybe you just don't believe in George Washington or God, or like the boss of you or someone is controlling you. Stand up and take these masks off these children. Don't be afraid. And we voted you to be the school board members we wanted you to be. Okay, so please make the schools better, not worse. Goodbye.
Absolutely fantastic testimony there by little 8-year-old Selah. Can you imagine standing as an adult having her talk down to you that way? It's amazing. And, you know, I just want to close this out by wishing you all a happy Thanksgiving. But I want you to remember that the reason we find ourselves in the issues we are, that we are in today is because we stopped talking to each other. We let them tell us that there are politically correct conversations, and there are conversations we should not have. We should not take a Thanksgiving dinner meal and talk about religion or talk about politics, or in this case, talk about medicine or masking or vaccines. I hate to tell you, but that's exactly where you talk about it. This is where you get to practice your testimony on your friends. Why don't you see what it takes to get them inspired, to at least think about the concepts, start talking to each other, see what works, what doesn't. One of the things that I want you to know, and I've said it before, the real talent, the real goal is not to just bludgeon people with a bunch of information. Use questions. Ask them questions about why they think what they do. Do you really just always tend to trust pharma no matter what product they make? Do you believe that they're only out there for your health? Start with questions and actually care about what that person sitting across the table from you has to say. Be intrigued by them. And then maybe they'll be intrigued by you. We can't expect them to listen to our information if we won't listen to theirs. This is about sharing. It's about loving. And it's about moving into a beautiful space. We need to create that environment with which we can communicate. Ignoring or hiding from this environment only creates more and more distance and animosity. So use this opportunity as we celebrate each other, we celebrate our families, we celebrate our heritage, we celebrate this great nation, the United States of America, and all the rest of you around the world that are watching The High Wire. You know, at the next big dinner, you can do it too. Speak your truth. Don't be afraid. Have these conversations now. The future of our species may depend on it. This is The High Wire, and I'll see you next week.
Where the heart is, the center of our gravity. Home is not a privilege that is granted by Her Majesty. A home is our right, a place to raise our family. Home is where we go for tranquility and sanctity. Home is where we feel at peace and we can have some privacy, where I can voice my thoughts and nobody tries to silence me. Home is where commotion turns to settling dust. Home is where we raise our kids to be better than us. And home is more than just a house. Home is where there's unity. Home is where we gather. Home is our communities. Home is the connection that we share when we trust. Home is not about me. Home is about us. Home is the guiding light within that we feel drawn to. Home is the source of our creation we belong to. Let them try with their lies meant to pull us apart. We always find our way home because we know it by heart.
All these long and lonely roads, they wind and bend, they find me friends, they lead me home. And I know no matter where I roam, I'm watching love from high above, I'm not alone.
Home is our cities, our states, and our countries. Home is the the earth below, the sky above me. Home is the truth we instinctively know, helping us to find home everywhere that we go. But there's many false prophets trying to lead us astray, who want to tell us what to do, but not hear what we say. They ignore us while they play their game of righteous pretend, like we don't notice that their rules ain't applying to them. While our children have lost their future, made to cover up their faces, forced to get injections for attendance at their favorite places. Where does it end? When we take to the streets, the government won't call a hearing, they just call the police. And to the faithless stormtroopers, where is your humanity? Just following orders is no excuse for your insanity. It's time to cut the rod out at the source like a cavity. It's time to go home and realize that we're a family.
All these long and lonely roads, they wind and bend, they find me friends, they lead me home. And I know no matter where I roam, I'm watching love from high above, I'm not alone.
Do you recognize this country? Is this the way you like to live? Constantly harassed to put a mask upon your wife and kids. Cops with riot packs who like to act as if no rights exist. Alive, but we're not really living. What kind of life is this? The world is full of risks, but we don't need protection, cause all of their solutions are much worse than the infection. If we want resolution, we need unity, not politics. Why should we trust somebody who's broken so many promises? But maybe this was meant to be and had to happen all along. The cycle's always spinning and it's darkest right before the dawn. It's funny, to the point of laughing out loud, cause what they said would never happen, well it's happening now. And so many are waking up. Welcome to the front lines. The ones who know behind the clouds will always be the sunshine. You and I see through the lies, no longer alone, and let the compass in our souls guide and carry us home.
All these long and lonely roads, they wind and bend, they find me friends, they lead me home. And I know no matter where I roam, I'm watching love from high above, I'm not alone. All these long, lonely roads lead me home. I'm watching love from high above, I'm not alone. All these long and lonely roads, they wind and bend, they find me friends, they lead me home. And I know no matter where I roam, I'm watching love from high above, I'm not alone. Take me home.